Oh, hey, good morning, everybody. Paul with you here again, and it is good to be with you. It is good to be walking pain-free. That, when you're older, is a real blessing because not everybody wakes up uh, able to go out and walk. A lot of people wake up with severe chronic pain and other maladies that are no fun to deal with. So I'm very thankful for that, to the powers that be. Now, I'm doing this little funny video this morning because I have one subscriber who he's very concerned that I'm a little bit more to the right than he would like. I think that's fair to say. It's a fair assessment. And well, he has a thing about he doesn't like when I talk about homosexuals, but look, it's kind of like exactly what Eddie Murphy said. Eddie Murphy says, look, you can be friends with, gay people. But it always comes down to brass tacks. He says, you can be friends with a gay person. It's just like, you be hanging out with them and then, and then, they go and you leave separate ways and you say, he says, let's go suck some dick. And then you say, Eddie Murphy says, you know what? You go suck a dick and I'll have a beer. How's that? So, and it's kind of like, it's the baseline to that. The other problem that I have with the gay people, and I can't really be friends with them. I had a friend named David, and he was absolutely queer as a $3 bill. And he was my friend, but it was difficult because the gay men oftentimes try to make you believe that somehow your thoughts are in error and that you really want to engage in some sort of activity with them when you don't. But that's all, water under the bridge. That's why you can't really be friends with them, because oftentimes, especially if you're intelligent or you're in good shape or you're sane, any man, not only a gay man, but gay men, of course, they'll be attracted to that, of course. So aside from that, and the Latino takeover of South Florida, which is already not on its way, it's already been done here. Those are the two things. And of course, the illegal immigrants that are taking our jobs left and right. Of course, these are jobs that no one would do, of course. And, et cetera, et cetera. So I get it. And so you're down here, there's probably 3% white in this place that I'm at. It's probably between 3 and 4%, if 4%. And when you regionalize it down to the areas that I could afford to live in, you could probably say 1%, if that. Every time I see a white person over there at the place that I go to for groceries, like Fresca Mas and all that, and actually now I don't see it anymore. I used to see the guy that was playing Van Halen, on the back of his bike, riding around with his army jacket on. That's all gone now. That's all gone. And I remember when it was starting. I remember being up by the airport, right by I-95, and I don't know what I was doing there. I think I was driving, and I looked. And I saw a hillbilly, and boy, this guy was a hillbilly all the way. And he had his boots strung across his back, and he had a kind of a broken down truck. And he said, well, I'm coming back up there because there's nothing happening here. And that was a long, long time ago. That was around 30 years ago, I would say. That was probably around 90, maybe 96, 95. I remember it to this day. And, I remember you could always get a job back in 98, 99. You could always get a job, even 2000, I think. You could always get a job. If you got up at 3:30 in the morning and you got down to the labor workforce place, and you could always work. And the problem was it was brutal because you'd get in there at like 3:45. If you got in there at 4:30, you may not get picked for work because there were so many drug addicts and burnouts and stuff that were lined up waiting to get work. So essentially what you had to do is get in there at around 3:45 or no later than 4 a.m. and then you would likely get out. But you wouldn't start getting paid until you were all processed in and you got on a vehicle like a van or whatever it was, and you might be working out in Lantana, which is above Boca, doing construction. Back then, everything was construction, and it's all built up now. Now it's all over. And then that was that. When you got dropped off at the place, that's when they started your pay. They didn't pay you for getting in the van and going up there. They made it very clear, and then the lead guy would have a notebook, and then he'd write down the time that you started. And I remember at that time in 94, 95, I remember, honestly, those guys that would work, they would clump up when they got out of work, and they would go down to the Antique Court Motel, which was it's not far from the beach. And, about 6 or 7 of them would get together, and then they would, pay $28 for the room or $36 for the room. And then, that's the way life worked. And they went out and they got themselves a pack of cigs and, a bag of weed or whatever it was that they did, and alcohol, whatever it was, and then they were ready for the next day's work. But they had to go to a place called Little Tiger because that was the place check cashing. I still remember that place. So if you didn't have any money, a bank account, you had to take that check. They charged you like $6 to $7, $8, and you made like $38. And by the time you got done, you had about 30. I remember 28. So you'd go to Little Tiger and they'd give you that $28. And then, the Marlboro, pack of Marlboros or 954s. And if you could afford it, a little bit of weed, this and that and the other thing. So I know how it worked. It doesn't work like that anymore here. It's all finished. It's all finished. So that's how this area has changed. And, when the migrants came in, they had it easy because... and then I remember also up in the area of Davie there, Old Davie, where not way out west, but right in the heart of Davie, where it's like Cowboys. I don't know if that place Griff's is still there. I'm not sure. I don't think it is. I haven't seen that place in a long time. That was really strange. I went in there one day because I went one night, and I heard, and this was back in like 95 or 96, something like that. And I remember hearing that they line danced. And I just didn't believe it. I didn't think like anybody would do that. I thought that was all like nonsense. They wouldn't do it, but they did. And they would all line up 30, 40 people in line in multiple lines, and then they do these line dances, like country music especially. So I remember at that time, going into Davie, and I remember one redneck, I shouldn't laugh, but, he was a hardcore redneck, beer drinker, smoker, et cetera, problems with the wife. And I guess he was kicked out of his place or whatever. And he was kind of yelling and screaming at the Spanish people who were coming over, and they were becoming more and more frequent, the migrants. So you have to understand this. That's pretty much how things work here. And these people might have been able to get their shit together. I'm being honest with you. They may have been able to get their shit together. They may have been. But with construction companies that need reliable workers, there's just nowhere to go. There's just nowhere to go as a drunk redneck here anymore, or drunk anything. You're just not going to be able to do it because There's just too many people waiting to take the jobs here. But anyways, so the point is about making friends. First of all, most of the people there that are immigrants, they can't speak the language here in the United States. I'm not saying you have to, talk like, you're wearing a tuxedo and going to a Amadeus movie or whatever, or play or whatever it is. But you're just not going to be able to have anything in common with these people. Of course, you have two eyes and you have two legs and a mouth and everything else. But believe me, I'm thinking about, I had this landlord, and he was a weasel. He was from Cuba. A little short guy. He's about 5 years younger than me. And I rented a place from him. And the trouble started when he wound up courting this woman who thought an awful lot of herself. That was from Venezuela or something. I don't know where she was from. I think she was from South America. But she thought a lot about herself. And they wound up getting married. And I remember, he lived alone. The guy lived alone. And I remember he had this big meeting with the courting this woman, and the woman had now, it's not only Spanish tradition, but that's what they kind of do. She brought her parents over to meet him, and my landlord there decided to have a little go-round with a prostitute there, very well filled out in the hips prostitute, and I was in my place, and there was a door there. No, there wasn't. There was a door, but he didn't open the door. He went around to the back because I lived in the back. And he brings this woman tugging on her arm and throws her at me and says, "Keep her here and keep her quiet." And he had that whole meeting with his soon-to-be wife while I sat there and looked at that girl. And I mean, we couldn't do anything because it's like, I hate to say this, but it's kind of like an animal. It's like you don't know what in the hell to do. And it was just really awkward, So that went on for about 20 minutes. And then he thought to come back and then dismiss the family over there for a minute or whatever it was. And then he got her out. So this is the kind of shit you're dealing with down here. It's a rich mosaic, shall I say, of insanity here in South Florida. I do mean that. Because everything has just changed. Whenever you get another culture that comes in, and it's kind of like a lower culture. I mean, you might think it is. And there are some Spaniards that are very high. And I know I can think of a couple. I know the one guy that I saw him on YouTube, and he was a guy that was a painter, and he was very big on going to, functions that were of higher class, concertos, piano, like that kind of stuff. And I remember I was looking through about masks when we were doing Scam, and he came on and he had one of these little long sticks, and on the stick it had a mask. Like, there's some plays or something that you do that with. And he says, yes, they want me to wear a mask. And he took that thing on that stick and he put it up and he said, that's the mask I wear. And you could tell this guy was real smart. Real smart. I think Ricardo Montalban was probably pretty smart too. I know he spoke a couple of languages very well. And I forgot where he was from. It was either Mexico or Spain. I forgot now. And on other news, just to break this up, I bought a coffee for $6.99. I bought boy, that young lad is very young to be alone out there. Unless he lives over there. That's a young lad. There's a lot of bad traffic here and a lot of stupid egghead people that like to ride around here real fast. Okay, his mom is over there. Okay, I feel better about that now. I forgot what I was going to say now, but the coffee. I bought this coffee. I can't even make out the name. I went back to the Russian place that I used to work at this last, I think it was Sunday. No, it was Saturday. I went on Saturday because I needed coffee, and sometimes they had specials on coffee, and I would certainly buy it. But there were no specials, but I did see the this. I can't even remember what the name of it was. I forgot now. I'll show it to you later. But I just tried it last night, and boy, is it good. It has absolutely no bite at all. It's a biteless coffee, and it's very smooth, and it's basically it tastes like Tassel's, except I'd say this was even a little bit tamer than Tassel's coffee. And Tassel's, I guess maybe it might be grown in the Ukraine. I'm not sure. It says EU, so I don't know what that means, but it could be because it's all in Russian or Ukrainian or something, all the instructions on how to make it and everything. I forgot the name of it, but I'll show you later because it is a great cup of coffee. I did like that San Mateo or whatever that was. That Spanish one was very good too, and it was over a year old. There now, what these companies are doing is they're buying these wholesale lots of maybe 500, 600, 800, 400 pieces of things that are expired. And you got to watch that now. You got to watch the dates, especially for things like nuts and beef jerky and stuff like that. They're getting like these wholesale lots, and they're over a year old. So, I mean, especially Dollar Tree, they've been doing it a lot. But that place was, forget what the name of that place was I went to. Sunshine Market or something. It's a Latino market, very nice people in there. When you go in, they grab a basket for you, and then they wash it off and give it to you. Nice. They're nice people. I forgot the name of that place. But anyways, you got to watch it. Watch your labels. So here, when you zone it down, it's also the other thing here is that you don't get a blending of people like in the Philippines. In the Philippines, you get a lot of people who are from every walk of life, and they more or less come together. That doesn't really happen here. It doesn't really happen. Also, they don't have to deal with minorities because most Filipinos are Filipinos, and by and large, that's the way it is. They might have some Japanese or Koreans. I know that for sure. They have Japanese and Koreans. So and they're starting to build, but by and large, it's all Filipinos. So they don't have these problems like we have here in the U.S. By the time you get done with it, you have less than 2% white, which is who you're basically going to go with if you're a white guy. I mean, especially if you're an older white guy, you're going to have to find a woman, that's white. And you're not going to maybe see 3 out of every 100 people here. So they also have to speak English, and that's not always the case. So it's very, very difficult here. It is virtually impossible. It happened to me only 2 times in my whole life when I had a girlfriend up in Lake Worth, which is right by West Palm Beach Airport. And I just happened to have something with her for about 3 or 4 months, which was very pleasant. I got a tattoo on my arm about it, and a broken heart, of course. That was a rough one. Boy, I'll tell you. I used to be love's a bitch. I used to see her from time to time, go pick her up. Thank my mom for the car that she would loan me, and I'd go pick her up, bring her back to my mom's place there, and she was never home. And we would make beautiful music together. Hell. Boy, you scared me, boy. I didn't know what was going on, boy. There's this green fencing here, and I just heard something moving, and scared the devil out of me. You're a good boy, huh? Anyways, live action for you. Anyway, so what the hell are you gonna do? I had that girlfriend up in West Palm Beach and Lake Worth there, and and she was a bad girl. And she wound up going with the wrong guy, and she picked up a dose and brought it back to her live-in boyfriend. Essentially, they were like married, and he's a nice guy. I saw him. I didn't talk to him, but I saw him, and he worked at one of those hospitals up there. He was like a nurse or something. I forgot what he was, but he's a nice guy, very good-looking guy, about 35 years old, 34, 35 years old, no older than that. Very handsome young man, and I think at that time I was probably around, that was, what, 98? That was in 98, so I was like 36 or something. I was still a young man. And I don't know, she'd meet me in a place, and then, I'd pick her up. It was definitely not, down low. And then we'd make beautiful music together, and then she would come back, to her place, and she worked at the Cumberland Farms. That was a little convenience store. Boy, oh boy, that was really something. And I told that story before. She was so popular. She was 46, but she had a body that it was just incredible. You know, one of those girls that could wear a burlap bag. She was really incredible, and everybody wanted her. And I came back from the Philippines. The first day I came back, I showed her pictures, and she lived right near that area. So we kind of hit it off. And 2 weeks later, she called me, because all I had is a beeper back then, because I was staying with friends up there, my family. And, she called me, and then kind of went out. And then I was so shy. I told her I sure would like to lay down with you. And then she says, "What does that mean?" And like she had to force me to say it, So she said, "Well, come pick me up next week, okay?" And she was real good to me. And I guess it was that she kind of felt sorry for me. I think that was probably essentially what happened. But I used to go back into that store, and it just said, it's like a 7-Eleven, but it's one of those things that was like the place to go in the morning when you had to fill up your gas tank and get your breakfast or whatever. And it was before all the Latinos came in here. But there were some, but not very many. It was mostly white. It was hillbilly up there too. So I just remember a lot of these hillbillies would come up to her, and like everybody loved her, everybody loved her. And, the guy, he's like an old, like a 40-year-old guy that was married hopelessly with a woman with kids that, the routine, the hillbilly type. And he went up to the woman, and he said, her name was Lucy. And he said, "Lucy, what would it take for you to marry me?" And he grabbed her hand and I remember watching it. And she said, "Well, come by tomorrow and come in a nice tuxedo and bring me a dozen roses." And honest to God, he did the next day. He must have rented a tux, because he was in a tux, and he came over, and she couldn't believe he did it. And it was really funny, because everybody's laughing about it, except him. He really was quite serious about it. But this is the kind of woman that it was. But I had, I fell in love with her. I couldn't help it, And my mom liked her too. My mom met her a couple of times, and she liked my mom too. But anyways, when my mom was alive, that was back in the year 1998 or early 99. Her evidently she went with the wrong guy, and she picked up a dose, and it somehow transmitted it to her husband. It was not from me. I know that for a fact. But she gave a dose to her husband there, and he beat her up real bad at that Cumberland Farms store. And needless to say, she didn't work there anymore. He beat her up real good. And the weird thing is, she stayed with him. She stayed with him, and he beat her pretty good. At that time, the police in Lake Worth, it was something like a small town in Texas, and that kind of, he didn't get arrested. He was Uh, he was a good member, good standing member in society. He had a house, and he was part of the NASCAR deal. I saw him one time when um, he was bowling up there with her, and she had to give me something or another. I forgot what it was, but I think I know what it was. She was making arrangements to see me, and she couldn't call me. So she said, go over to the bowling alley. So I did. I saw the guy. He was a very handsome guy. Very, very nice guy, handsome guy, and younger, way younger than her. And she had a child. She had about a 20-year-old child, and he was a nice guy. He was a nice kid. And he knew I was seeing her because I saw him on the street. I recognized him, and I said, "You're Lucy's son, aren't you?" And he's like, "Yeah. Who are you?" I said, "I'm just a friend. I know her." And she says, "Oh, I think I know who you are." So he was a nice kid. He's a nice guy. Anyways, it was too bad what happened to her. And then the last I heard, she'd moved up to Canada. So I don't know that. But broke my heart. And I'll tell you something. We used to go to a little park up there, and in Lake Worth, it's beautiful. They've got little mini lakes that you could they're long and finger-like. And you can ride jet skis in them and stuff like that. They're not super huge, but they're big enough. And then they have like barbecue pits that you could just pull in and go to, and you can cook. It was really nice. And God, I remember occasionally I would go up there for something or another, a delivery or whatever it was. Or I think I went up there a couple of times when I had to buy lawn equipment, because I was doing it then. I was kind of just starting out. Well, it was more than just starting out. I was doing it for a few years. And I remember I went up to get some lawnmower part or something, and I came back, and every time I would go by that area of Lake Worth, I would cry uncontrollably. I would just weep, and sometimes I'd stop my car or my truck, and I'd have to weep. And that was really, that's love. What can I tell you, right? And then on my travels to the Philippines, I had a travel agent. She was Chinese, pure Chinese from Hong Kong. And we wound up becoming more than friends. And she had health problems, something like that, health problems. But nonetheless, she treated me very, very well. She was also my senior about 10 years too. She was like maybe 50 and I was like maybe 38, something like that. And we had something going there a little bit, but not anything really too serious. But the husband didn't care. The husband was like the typical Chinese guy who wanted to sell you herbs. So he opened up a shop and wound up getting arrested immediately because he kept telling about how this herb did this and this would cure this and this would cure this. And they arrested him immediately. I still remember that. And so he had, just sex was not part of his life. He was completely asexual. And his whole thing was some money, as, a lot of these Chinese are, Chinese people are like that. Anyways, what this has to do, so my last interaction where somebody came close enough to me to touch me, I'm trying to think where it was with the girls. I remember what it was with the girls. I was working at that Russian place, and I was at the door and I had to let them out. So I was just joking, and I said, "Look, these girls are talking to me and everything. It's nice, But and they kind of giggled and laughed, and they kind of got it, I guess. But since then, about four or 5 days ago, I was walking. I'll close the story here. This is enough. Now another excellent story coming tomorrow. Anyways, it's just kind of keeping me company here because I'm walking, and right now I'm at around 4 miles, I would say. And I'm coming up on around 5 miles, so I'll get back home very shortly. Anyways, yes, I've got to remember where I was at. They say if you eat fish, that it improves your short-term memory. Because I do that. I kind of forget, and then I realize what I'm talking about. I remember now. Don't worry, I remember. When I lived with that old woman and kind of took care of her, I used to live down the street from a kid. He wasn't a kid. He was about maybe 30 years old, 28 years old, 27. But he was kind of slow. He was a little bit slow. He wasn't like a regular guy. He was a little slow, but he was a nice guy. I had, one bad thing to say about him. He's a nice guy. And I used to see him, and he used to come down, and he knew I cut yards. And he would talk to me, and he'd have a mower like that one over there. And all he did was, basically go up and down the street asking people if he could cut their yard for $20, and he just used the mower. And sometimes he would have a blower, and sometimes he wouldn't. And that's basically all he did. And he would see me every once in a while, and he'd say, "Do you have any work? Can I work with you?" And I told him basically I didn't have enough work. That was true. But the point being is he was a pretty nice guy. And I hadn't seen him because he was always like walking around. Now, of course, it's been pretty dry with the exception of about a week ago. We got real hard rain, and 2 weeks ago too. So it's kind of picking up here a little bit. But it had been so dry since December that there was nothing happening for sure. And I hadn't seen that guy in a long time, like maybe like over a year, maybe more than a year. I didn't see him at all. And I went into the store, the grocery store, and evidently he was there and with his dad or something. I know where he lives. He lived on the same street I did, but up the road a bit. I just never seen him for like the last year and a half. And he goes, "Paul." And I said, I didn't know who it was. And he came over and he goes, and before he came over to me, I said, "I thought you died." And then he kind of laughed a little bit. And then he came over and he actually hugged me. I couldn't believe it because I was going to give him like a fist bump. And he came over and he hugged me. And I was like kind of freaked out about it because he hugged me. And I was like, I gave him a hug back and gave him a pat on the back. I said, "How have you been? I haven't seen you in a long, long time." So this whole business with friendship is very few and far between here unless you speak of the Spanish, if you know what I mean. Anyways, folks, I have definitely lost weight. I can see it now. I went and I bought shirts, and I'm having no trouble getting into an XL now. And before I was in a 2X. I was pretty close to a 2X because not every XL would fit me. And now I'm getting close to the size large. But I can't buy any more shirts. I just can't. I can't. I have like 15 now, and that's just going to have to do. That's it. And then, of course, when the summer heat comes in, it feels like a 500-pound person is sitting on you all the time. I can't really wear these shirts. I have to just stick to a T-shirt. It's so oppressively hot. Anyways, folks, take care. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. And I will see you later today with the news. Boy, it is nice to be able to get out and walk for 4 or 5 miles and have no pain. I will tell you that. That's something to be very grateful for. Even though there are plenty of other things I don't have, I have that. Take care, folks, and I'll see you later with the news. Bye.